Yes, that's definitely correct. I believe that it's very important for negotiations to take place to facilitate a transition to democracy. And because my party is very keen to facilitate the transition from dictatorship to democracy, we have had contacts with the regime. But unfortunately, those contacts have not borne fruit. And following the violence that took place in Karachi on May 12th, when 48 people were killed in one day, it became totally inappropriate for us to talk about any understanding with the present regime. There's a lot of anger. But having said that, and while there's no deal with the present regime, I do think that it's important for the moderate forces to unite to undermine religious militancy and extremism in my country.
And in fact, you wouldn't rule out there being some form of cooperation with Musharraf later when this inappropriate phase has passed, if it was something that would lead to democracy?
If there's a transition to democracy, certainly we could look at it. But my concern is that General Musharraf's regime is still living very much in the past. For example, the crisis in Pakistan has been generated with the sacking of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the country, who is now suspended. And my party feels that the regime is allowing this tension or this crisis in the country to continue. It could simply reinstate the Chief Justice and diffuse the crisis. But it's not doing that because it still believes that it can get away with undermining the judiciary. And that worries me because a strong judiciary is so very essential to the functioning of a truly democratic system.
And in terms of democratic system, could you and Mr. Nawaz Sharif go back to Pakistan if President Musharraf kept saying no?
Well, Mr. Nawaz Sharif and I both plan to return to Pakistan. I must say, David, I was deeply disappointed when General Musharraf said a week ago that insisted that he would stop Mr. Nawaz Sharif and myself from returning. But I believe there's a growing groundswell that believes that by isolating the top leadership of the two main moderate parties in the country, Pakistan is falling deeper into a crisis. And I was certainly encouraged by a letter written a couple of months back by 4 US senators that called for fair elections to be held and called also for Mr. Nawaz Sharif and myself to be allowed to participate in those elections. The British High Commissioner, Robert Brinkley, also made some very important statements relating to the restoration of democracy. So I feel that within Pakistan and also in the international community, there's a growing realization that to undermine the forces of religious extremism and to deliver to the people of Pakistan, it's very important to restore democracy.
Yes, I read somewhere that, that in the last election, the Islamist vote was about 12% or something. Do you think it would be bigger or smaller than that in the election later this year, assuming you're both fighting it?
I believe that the Islamist parties have certainly weakened. They've formed two governments in the frontier and the Balochistan provinces, but they haven't been able to deliver to the people. So there's a great degree of disenchantment with regard to them. The Islamists also supported General Musharraf's passage of certain very unpopular laws that denied Parliament its true representation and strengthened the presidency. So they've lost ground. And if the elections are fair and free, I don't see the Islamists doing well at all.
And would the two of you, you and Mr. Nawaz Sharif as the democratic figures, would you vote, would you campaign more? Would you campaign together as a joint party or as two separate parties? And how would you work out who would be Prime Minister?
Well, Mr. Nawaz Sharif and I are together in an alliance for the restoration of democracy, and both of us have pledged to the people of Pakistan that this is not just about the change of political leadership in the country, but it's about changing the political system itself. And in changing the political system, we're aiming at empowering the people. So we've pledged, irrespective of which one of us is in government or in opposition, of supporting a series of legislation aimed at reforming the judiciary, the election commission, the political institutions of the country. Now, we will campaign separately because both of us want to use our own party symbols in the election campaign, but I'm expecting us to reach some kind of local adjustment at the grassroots level. And I'm very delighted with Gallup polls that presently show that the Pakistan People's Party is the most popular party in the country, and that were Mr. Nawaz Sharif and I to work together, our joint coalition would win the elections hands down.
Right, and one part of the Constitution you've also got to change, haven't you, is in order for either of you to have a third term, because theoretically 2 terms is the maximum, isn't it? How long would it take to change that?
Well, certainly we need to lift the ban on the twice elected Prime Minister seeking a third term. Now, while discussing the transition of democracy with the present regime, this is also an issue that has come up because we feel that there ought to be a balance of power between the president and the parliamentary leader. In this connection, democracy in Pakistan was destabilized in the 90s because the president had the power to remove a prime minister, and he kept, one president after another kept sacking one parliament after another. Now, we want to be different in the future, and this is the reason both Nawaz Sharif and the People's Party have agreed on lifting the ban on the twice elected Prime Minister from contesting a third time, as well as doing away with the dismissal powers. And with the present regime and General Musharraf too, I think the reason the transition is important is for the people to have their say. It's very important that the balance between President and Parliament be restored.
And you've said on occasions in the past that the intelligence services in Pakistan had, some of them, the rogue elements, had been working with Al-Qaeda, possibly on one assassination attempt on you. That's one of the things you're going to have to reform. Do you think that's still true?
I do believe that there are elements within the security apparatus, particularly those who were associated with the Afghan jihad of the 80s against the Soviets, who still have links with some of the Taliban elements and the Al-Qaeda elements. Mr. Nawaz Sharif and I have pledged to reform the security apparatus in Pakistan too. I remember before Al-Qaeda was formed that both Ramzi Yousef and Khalid Sheikh tried to assassinate me. So the very forces that subsequently attacked the World Trade Centers initially attacked democracy in Pakistan. And I'm convinced that terrorists see democracy as their biggest threats, because in a democratic system, the people are empowered. And when the government delivers to the people of a country, then I believe that terrorists cannot exploit a situation to their advantage. I would like to leave a legacy. If I'm elected as Prime Minister for a third time round, I want to leave a legacy, and I want that legacy to be peace in the region and empowerment of the people at home. I hope to work closely with the Indian and the Afghan governments and the international community in eliminating terrorism and ensuring that the people of South Asia can prosper through democracy.
Benazir, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure to talk, and we thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David.
In a moment, I'll be talking to Mo Ibrahim, the man who is offering African leaders $5 million with conditions. That's after this short break.